The Scenario Manager in Excel is a great feature for comparing multiple sets of data in a worksheet. My name is Bob Flisser from Envato Tuts Plus, and I want to show you how this feature can help you make decisions. For example, let's say we're concert promoters and we want to produce a show, and we need to decide which venue we want to use because the size of the venue will determine costs, revenues, profit, and a whole bunch of other things, like what talent to contract for and how much lighting we need and so on. Now, the file I have open, you can see here, is called scenarios.xlsx. And if you want to recreate this on your own, that's fine. Or if you want, you can download the file from this page. Let's take a look at what's happening here. We have a section for costs, and we have here how many seats and what talent we're going to contract for and a whole bunch of other costs. At the bottom, we have our total. And you notice this total is highlighted in a background color. That means it's calculated. I just formatted that to make it easier for you to see what's happening. Scroll down here a little bit, and with revenues, we input what the price per ticket will be, and the rest of these costs are also automatically calculated. The reason I'm showing you these calculated cells is that when you create a scenario, you're only going to be inputting into the scenario which fields you're actually modifying directly. You never modify calculated cells. So let's take a closer look here. We put in the talent that we're going to contract for. The bigger the venue, the bigger the name, so the greater the cost of the talent will be. The rental of the venue, of course, is going to be higher. How much amplification and lighting we need. The cost of printing or producing tickets, however we do it electronically, is going to be higher. We're going to need more security, and the insurance costs are going to be higher. And also, just for the sake of simplicity, if we're going to have multiple acts in the show, we're going to roll that all into the same number. And when we add up all of these numbers here, we get to the total cost. So just make sure that this number of seats, that's not a dollar figure, so that doesn't get rolled into the cost, not directly. With the revenues, we input what the price is per ticket, and all of these are calculated. So the ticket sales, you can see we're just multiplying the number of seats times the ticket price. With merchandising, and you can see all here in the formula bar, with merchandising, that's like t-shirts and souvenirs and things, we're assuming we're going to sell an average of $5 a seat. For food and beverage, we're going to estimate that we're selling $15 a seat. And adding up these three numbers gives us our total revenue. And then the profit or loss, as I said before, we're going to take what the total revenue is, subtract the total costs, and see what happens. This also gives me a chance to show you one of my favorite tips in Excel, and that is, what if you want to see all of these formulas all at the same time without having to click each individual one and looking at the formula bar? What you do is this. If you take a look at your keyboard, to the left of the number 1 and above the tab key is a key with a little accent mark on it, and this shortcut works identically the same on both Windows and Mac. If you press Control accent mark, that expands the sheet, and now you can see all of the formulas at once. And to get the sheet back to normal, again, Control accent mark brings you back. Okay, so you ready to create some scenarios? Let's select the cells that we're going to input. So I'm going to click that 300. I'll hold down the Control key. If you're on the Mac, you can hold down the Command key. Select, just drag down over those cells, and also hold the Control key or Command key on the Mac and click that cell. So you can see we've selected all of the cells that are input, and we have not selected any of the cells that are calculated. Now let's go over here to the Data tab on the ribbon bar, and over here on the right we have this Forecast section. Click this What If analysis and choose Scenario Manager. Now the first time you bring it up, this is going to tell you there are no scenarios defined because this is a brand new worksheet. So we're going to go and create some scenarios. So over here, click Add. And the first thing you want to do is give it a name. So let's just call this Original Values. I generally do that when I first create a scenario. You don't have to, but it just makes life a lot easier. And you see over here, it tells you the cells that are changing. And if you click in the box, you can see the marching ants around them. So that way, let's say if you selected the incorrect cells when you were starting the Scenario Manager, you could easily fix it here. A comment is optional. And I'll just say I'll call this, I don't know, Original Values. Values when we started. Down here for protection, this deals with if you're going to lock and protect a sheet. And that's another lesson for another day, so let's just ignore that. So click OK. And this scenario values pop up. This dialog box says, okay, here are all the cells that you're putting in the scenario. What values do you want them to be? And this is the part of Scenario Manager that's probably the most difficult to work with because these are not labels, right? This, like B4, this is showing you, okay, this is B4. Excel is not telling you, oh, this is the number of seats, and this B6. Oh, that's the cost of the talent. You just have to be aware of what each of those are. Also, something else that's kind of confusing. This is showing us 5 values, 5 inputs, but you can see we have more than 5, right? We have 9 values. So you have to be sure to use the little scroll bar here to look at all of them. But the confusing part is that when you scroll down, it still shows you 5. This isn't showing you 1 to 5 and then you scroll down and then it's 6 to 9. So just really be aware of that. And this little pop-up, you cannot stretch it out either. So just be careful what you're doing here. Now, we aren't changing any of these values yet because, as I said, these are the original values. Now, if you simply wanted to say, okay, I'm done, I want to go and immediately create a new scenario, you could click the Add button, and you might do that later on in the lesson. For now, let's click OK, because that enters, it saves the scenario, and it puts us back in the Scenario Manager dialog box. And you can see, here's the name of the scenario, there's a comment we wrote, here's the cells we're changing. Okay, so now what we want to do is let's create 3 more scenarios. We're going to create scenarios for medium, large, and very large venues. So let's click Add. And this name, I'll call this medium venue. The changing cells, it sounds confusing. Those remain the same. We're not picking new cells. Comments, you could leave that here. Maybe I'll just delete that and click OK. Now we'll put in some new numbers. So for a medium venue, I'll say 800 seats. And type that in, and you just hit the Tab key to get from one field to the next. Works like anywhere else in Windows or Mac. For a larger venue, it means we need, let's say, better talent or talent that's going to attract more people, so that's going to cost more, and I'll say that's 7,500. You don't have to type in commas or dollars or anything, just type in the numbers. So the venue rental is going to cost more. I'll say that's 1,000. And we'll make the lighting, the amplification is going to cost more. That's 600. The lighting will cost more. I'll say that's 350. The cost of ticketing will be more. That'll be 250. Security, we're going to need more of that. That'll be 300. And insurance is going to be higher. Let's say that's 250. Now we need to determine what's the ticket price. So because this is a larger venue and better talent, we'll say the ticket price is $35. Now we could go and use the Add button. So I'll click Add, and now we immediately get back to Add Scenario instead of back to the main Scenario Manager dialog box. So let's call this Large Venue. And I'll just delete the comment. Click OK. So let's say for this large venue, this is going to be 1,500 seats. The talent will be 12,000. The venue rental will be 3,500. Amplification will be 1,000. Lighting will be 700. Ticketing will be 350. Security will be 1,000. Insurance will be 500. And for this, we're going to charge a ticket price of $50. We'll click Add and add the last one, and we'll call this Very Large Venue. And again, delete the comment. Click OK. And let's say this one is going to be 5,000 seats. So the talent is going to cost us $25,000. $10,000 to rent the space. $2,500 for sound, $2,000 for lighting, $500 for ticketing, $2,500 for security, another $2,500 for insurance. And for this one, I think we still have to charge $50 for tickets. Can't really charge too much. And that's it. Click OK. And now you see we have 4 scenarios. Now you're looking at this and you might say, okay, well that's great, but so what? I still see my original values. Well, here's a cool part, or here's the first cool part. Double click any of these. So if you double click medium, you notice everything changes, and you can even scroll down. Even with the dialog box open, you can scroll down and say, okay, I'm going to have greater costs, greater revenue, but I'm going to have a greater profit. I can choose very large, original values, whatever you like. So that way, just with a simple double click, you can change what's going on the worksheet. Now, that's great, but wouldn't it be nice if we could see all of the values all at the same time? And maybe let's say you had data from another worksheet, from other scenarios. Well, if you do, you can click Merge to merge in values from another summary. We're not going to do that, but I'll click Summary to create one. And this says, okay, what kind of summary do you want? Do you want a regular scenario summary, or do you want a pivot table? Again, pivot tables are another lesson for another day. We're going to choose scenario summary. And you see over here where it says result cell. Excel is smart enough to understand, oh, okay, this is literally our bottom line. This is what we're after. So that's really what we want to target. And that's great. Now, before I click OK, notice down here, we have just one sheet in this workbook. I'll click OK. And now it gives us it creates an additional sheet with that scenario summary. So this lays everything out. This tells us what's the current values that are on the sheet, and here are the 4 scenarios we created: original, medium, large, and very large venues. And we can see what's the size, what's the cost of talent, and all that other stuff, and ticket price, and then finally, how much are we going to make? Now, there are 2 downsides of this. One is that this is not dynamic. This is not dynamically connected to our original values. In fact, if you press that Control accent mark shortcut from before, you can see there's no calculations. These are all regular data. I'll press that shortcut again. So if you're going to change any of the info in the underlying data, you'll have to rerun the scenario summary. The other downside are these cells that are changing. Again, Excel doesn't know what the labels are. It's just telling us, hey, this is cell B4. Hey, this is cell B6. But there's nothing wrong with you changing it on your own. If you need to, you can take the column, you can take column C, stretch it out, and you can manually change this to say number of seats. Stretch that a little more. And for this, you can say artist. And then after you type all that in, this will look a lot more meaningful to you. One last thing. Do you notice these kind of weird looking minus and plus things on there? If you're not familiar, this is part of grouping and outlining. By the way, that's also under the Data tab. That's all in this Outline section. This will let you collapse some of the details so you can see just the summary. So for example, if I click this little minus sign, that kind of collapses that, but what I'm really after, if I collapse that minus sign, maybe bring this back up, then I can see just the profit and loss, and I don't see any of the underlying data. Let's bring that back. Or if I click this little plus sign, then I can see what the comment was that I entered originally. It's not completely useful because this little minus sign, if you click that, it's just going to collapse any of the wording, and you probably want to see that anyway. But grouping and outline is a great feature. I do recommend you look into it. Now, you might wonder, okay, why did I really need Scenario Manager for this? Couldn't I have gone into the original worksheet and just given, let's say, this column a title of small venue and then had 3 more columns for the other 3 venues and just have them side by side? Yes, you could have, and that's because this is a simple, contrived worksheet just to show you how Scenario Manager works. There may be times when you don't have the space or there are other things going on in the worksheet and you just really don't or can't show that. So that's where Scenario Manager really comes into play. So the next time you want to compare several sets of data, maybe you want to make a decision, maybe you're trying to figure out what course of action to take, look into Scenario Manager. I think it'll help you out.